Hey, welcome everybody to the meeting of OHA's Committee on Resource Management. It is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024, and it is 1:03 a.m., 10:03, sorry, 10:03 a.m. Yeah. And I'm officially calling this meeting to order. Members present at this time is Trustee Souza, Trustee Galataria, Trustee Lindsay, Trustee Akaka, Trustee Ahuna, Trustee Akina's here also. Is Alapa? Okay. And myself giving us quorum. Trustee Trask has been asked to be excused from the meeting, so she is excused. Also joining us, supporting us on this this conference is Karina Kina and Melissa Winahan, as well as joining us also is our Pohana Stacy Ferreira. And at this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Stacy to introduce the other administrative staff joining us on this meeting. Stacy.
Aloha kakahiaka, Chair, Trustees. Joining us today administratively, we have Chief Financial Officer Ramona Hink, Financial Analyst Grace Chen, Endowment Director Ryan Lee, Interim Corporation Counsel Everett Ota, Interim Senior Legal Counsel Nichi Ozawa, Senior Director of Hawaiian Cultural Affairs Hailama Farden, Director of Oiwi Wellbeing and Ainamomona Kuike Kamakea Ohelo, Director of Community Engagement Niniao Kawaihai, Grants Manager Kiala Newman, Director of Land Assets Tim Wong, IT Systems Engineer and Administrator Daniel Santos and Kelsey Wade, Strategy Consultant Aulani Freitas, and Integrated Assets Manager Lori Walker. Mahalo.
Thank you, Stacy. So with that, I'd like to move on to the approval of the minutes of April 17th. Trustee, has anybody signed up to testify on the minutes of April 17th? Okay,
Thank
Trustee
you.
Kina.
Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of April 17th.
It's been moved by Trustee Kina, seconded by Trustee Souza. Any changes to the minutes, members? If there are none, then can I get a roll call vote for their approval?
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye.
Trustee Akaka,
Aye.
Trustee Akina,
Aye.
Trustee Alapa is excused, Trustee Galataria,
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay.
Here.
It's approval of minutes.
Aye.
Trustee
Sorry.
Souza.
Aye.
Trustee Trask is excused. Chair Waihe,
Yes.
7 yes votes.
Okay, the minutes are approved. So we will move on to new business. And this is the consequence capital management presentations. Has anybody signed up to speak on this item?
No testifiers on this particular issue, Chair.
Chair,
Trustee
what is
Lindsay.
the time limit we're giving consequent this morning?
I haven't given them any,
Bijoy?
but we can give them.
A lot, trustees. I've asked the speakers to speak for about 20 minutes, allow some time for Q&A. And then I'll do a short, I'll do it as quickly as I can get through my material as well.
So how many speakers do you have?
3.
20 minutes? That's an hour. We have a 1,000-page agenda
Okay,
this morning. So maybe if we can
15?
shorten that a little bit.
maybe
I-
15.
I almost
Yeah,
feel
they're-
like they flew in, so I feel bad for asking this question, but I do know we have voluminous
Sure.
items in our agenda today.
Okay.
So
They look like they're in agreement and I'm sure they want to keep you happy. So we'll yank the plug if we have to.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Yeah.
Chair.
Just make it as quick as possible, I guess. So thank you, Vjoy. Go ahead.
Okay, aloha kako, trustees, staff, other visitors to the meeting today. Thank you very much. Again, we're Consequent Capital Management. We're the consultant to the Board of Trustees on the investment portfolio. And so, as we just discussed, we do have a number of outside speakers who manage assets for the portfolio, and also an example of an investment consultant to talk about what they do with asset owners to help with the board education. As far as the usual packet that I put out every meeting, it has the usual sort of background information, activities, and then a review of watch list policy this time. So if we move quickly to page 4, the review there, just want to remind the trustees that we did put out a draft investment governance policy last time, and we're going to put that all together and probably in June come back and ask for a policy vote. So we're putting out pieces of suggested policy for the investment policy document going forward. And we do look for input, and we will be making changes before you come to final approval. Also note that last time you had your custody and performance presentation provider, which was Northern Trust, present. And so if there are follow-up questions to that related to how custody is handled, or what is in the performance report, which is separate from the performance report that staff has started to present quarterly, that's also something that, you know, can go in as further conversation. Finally, I'll just add that Ryan Lee, your Director of Endowment, attended the Milken Conference at the beginning of the month, as did I. And so he may have some additional feedback and conversation over time on the value of those meetings and some of the follow-up that comes out of that. We were also able to meet with Ryan in California during the conference, where Jerry Flintoff, the consequent investment specialist for private markets, and Ryan met, and they continue to meet going forward, as the private markets are an area of the portfolio that we feel need to be addressed going forward in terms of how to improve performance and structure. And then I have a number of bullet points there, sort of coming up events. Some of them are tentative, but we do hope to bring in some additional speakers. If we move on to page 5 real quickly, I won't go into a lot of detail here. You have as an attachment to this document and in your file a suggested watch list policy document. And again, it's a draft, so it looks for input. And before we finalize, I actually have had some input since we sent out that material that you have with you. So there are already a few revisions, and we welcome additional revisions. I'll just note, as far as watch list policy, this is something that also staff has asked for, because they are looking at the portfolio and wanting to identify managers and strategies that require additional monitoring, and potentially at some point, probably in the new fiscal year, will look to maybe replace or you know, continue to bring in front of the board in terms of analysis. As far as this watch list policy, I just will note very briefly that there are both investment reasons and non-investment reasons for putting a manager or a strategy on watch. And we sort of list that out there on page 5. And so that's for your benefit, and I can certainly have additional conversations going forward regarding that. So that concludes the consequent sort of education manual or presentation for this particular meeting. Again, I'm happy to meet on the side and going forward, and I encourage that to go over anything that's in this material or going forward. At this point, then, I'd like to start to bring up our different speakers. So you're going to have 3 presenters. We're going to start with Makita, which is an investment consultant. They also offer other services like outsourced CIO, and they work with different clients. They actually are the investment consultant for the ERS and the EUTF here in the islands, but they're a national and even global organization, so they have clients elsewhere. I have actually worked with them as a consultant for myself in the past. But I thought it would be good to hear from them, because they will kind of give you an idea of how different boards, different asset owners work with investment consultants. After that, we'll hear from 2 of your current managers who have been managers of your assets for a long time. One will be Goldman Sachs Asset Management, and the other is JP Morgan Asset Management. And both of them will introduce themselves and explain the parts of the portfolio that they've managed for you, and give you an idea of performance and ideas of how they think they can optimally work with OHA going forward. So if there are no questions, then why don't we go ahead and follow the agenda? Yes.
Trustee Aquino.
Thank you, Vijay. And thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Am I correct in understanding that Makita Group does not yet provide services for OHA?
Yes, that's correct.
And what is the context in which you bring them to us today?
So like when we brought in front of you sort of other market participants, like other trustees from other organizations, um, investment CIOs from other organizations. The idea is to provide some context and some ideas of how OHA might think about working with a entity of that sort going forward. So they provide investment consultant services. That's something that we've said is a consideration for how you work with the marketplace going forward. And that doesn't preclude, obviously, having a really top-notch staff, and they can explain that. And that doesn't preclude working with top-notch asset managers or even being more active internally going forward. But it's all a process, and they're all sort of different ways. There's no one way to work with them. And so I just want to get examples of the ways you can work with different service providers going forward. And ultimately, it'll be your decision.
Thank you.
Okay, then why don't we bring up Makita to start off?
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to get the
Morning.
the stopwatch going, so I'm very well aware of time. We'll start on page 4 if the presentation gets going. We'll introduce myself, Colin Beebe on the left, and I have a colleague, Mika Malone, who's also online as well. So as Vijay alluded to, I've been working with Hawaii ERS since 2010 and Hawaii EUTF since 2011. So the state of Hawaii, the people of Hawaii are someone I care deeply about and who I've been working with for literally my entire career in the investment industry. I'll have Mika give just a quick background on herself, and then we'll touch on, there's 47 slides here. We're going through 5, I promise you.
My goodness. Sorry, everybody. I have a little technical challenge today here, being remote. Hi, everyone. Aloha. Mika Malone with Makita. And as Colin mentioned, I work in our Portland, Oregon office alongside Colin, but I also support Colin in the relationship with Hawaii ERS and have been at the firm for over 20 years now and have a lot of relationships across endowment clients, public fund clients, and others. And happy to answer questions as we move through the brief number of slides that Colin highlighted in order to help you just get a handle on how various consulting firms work with the marketplace. If we move forward to just the next slide is our just a quick background on slide 5 of Makita. And all I really wanted to highlight here, you know, when you look at Makita over the last 45 years, both the types of clients that we have worked with, as well as the context in which we work with those clients, has shifted dramatically. And I think that's really my view in terms of what's the overarching theme in how investment consulting has shifted over the last several decades. We work with a variety of clients where there is a significant staff in place. They need a consultant to provide just very specific kind of piecemeal services. Maybe it's assisting with manager searches or asset allocation. Other clients use a full service model where the consultant is active in all parts of the engagement. In some cases, it's to assist with private markets, asset allocation development, et cetera. And so when you look across those 249 clients that we work with today and our kind of 250 person-ish staff, each of us is engaged in, I would say, very specialized work with underlying clients based on the structure they have in place, their boards, their investment committees, their various outside service providers, and we're able to kind of adapt to those needs. And I think that's really critical. And I'll let Colin sort of continue that conversation.
Perfect. So I'm going to go to slide 9. The number one thing that investment consultants do for asset owners is to help you make decisions and specifically build frameworks and processes so you are making proper decisions that we would consider to be best practices. So I have a framework outlined on this page of the major investment decision areas that trustees need to be thinking about. I'm going to walk through each of those boxes sort of one by one, and we could almost stop after this slide, but I'll go to just a couple more. So the first one, that green box, investment policy. This is the highest level pieces of your portfolio, how you want to set your asset allocation, what your objectives are, how that asset allocation may or may not align with the grants, the spending that you want to do over time, looking at projections over time to make sure you are fulfilling your overall goals over time, not just this year, but over the next 5, 10, 20 years, whatever the timeline may be. The second box there is resourcing. As trustees, you are responsible for how do we actually resource this effort? How do we build staff? Who are we hiring as a custodian? Who are we hiring as a consultant? And those major vendors that actually make the system work over time. The third box in orange there, implementation. This is how the money actually gets into the ground. How are you hiring managers, reviewing managers, rebalancing, liquidating certain assets, or generating income to pay for grants and other spending sources? It's that day-to-day management. And the fourth piece, probably the first and the fourth are the most important. The fourth is reporting and monitoring. When you look at fiduciary law, the vast majority of fiduciary law pertains to duty to monitor, duty to have oversight of the system, of the portfolio. It's not necessarily the actual implementation when it comes to fiduciary law for trustees. It's about, do you have proper oversight processes and monitoring processes to make sure what's actually happening is aligning with that policy. So as consultants, we basically try to fill in that gap. What do you or any other potential client sort of need help with across these major boxes in this decision-making framework? Is it to help you improve upon, help staff with asset allocation and manager selection, or to help the board design better processes for monitoring and overseeing the program over time? As Mika alluded to, the industry has drastically changed in literally just the last 5 to 10 years, where consultants have much narrower scopes in a lot of cases now to really just fill in that gap for that specific client on what they may or may not have, whether it's about the asset allocation or the monitoring piece, or helping design high-level policies to make sure that the system, the entity, is designed to achieve its long-term objectives. And this is further highlighted on page 10. Historically, the vast majority of public-related systems, be that pensions, OPEBs, endowment, or sovereign wealth style entities, historically, almost all of those decisions were sort of handled by the board. You had to do a lot. You had all those 4 major boxes that sort of fell at your feet. The trend now is for boards to really sit at a little bit of a higher level, really focus on the policy piece, the resourcing piece, and then making sure the reporting is flowing through you properly, making sure what's going on at the manager level, the individual manager level, reconciles and is aligned with those overall policies at the top, while giving staff that sort of delegated authority to be doing hiring the managers, monitoring them, implementing them, and rebalancing over time. And where consultants come in is to help, once again, fill in that gap where maybe staff needs more help for our tools and our manager research, pacing studies for private markets, those sorts of things. It's very dependent on what you have as an entity and how you want to build it out over time. So it's less about these broad scope engagements that were, the history of our firm and others. It's definitely pivoted in recent years to be narrower in scope. And oftentimes it might be you come in initially with a wider scope to help build out these processes and tools. And over time, if we do our job right, you actually don't necessarily need us in that broad scope forever, maybe a couple of years. And the scope gets narrowed to really focus on where those gaps are in your particular situation. The last slide I'm going to finish on is slide 15, and this is what I already touched on. As trustees, whether it's with OHA or any other system, you are concerned about your fiduciary duty. And what does that mean? Well, the reality is it really relates to your duty to monitor and your duty to oversee and monitor the program over time. So making sure we have reports and processes, making sure your staff has proper processes for how they are hiring managers, reviewing managers, and making, once again, sure it all reconciles back to the top, that overall policy and goals you have as the trustees of a major entity in the state of Hawaii. So I'll pause there. I'm at about 7.5 minutes, so some success there, but happy to answer questions from the trustees, VJoy, anyone who may want to talk about what consultants do or what we're seeing across the industry. I mean, that is one of our sort of big areas of insight. Is we work with about 250 clients across the globe of various degrees, various sizes, and various objectives. So happy to provide opinions and viewpoints of what's going on across the world.
Okay, are there any questions, members? Trustee Aquino.
Thank you very much, Colin. I'm familiar with the historical trajectory of the ERS and the EUTF. And one of the questions that comes up is what has caused the growth of these funds? On one hand, it could be the management decisions that have been made over the past 5 years or so in which your company would have been involved. On the other hand, it could be the quantity of financial resourcing coming from the legislature's decision to pay down the overall long-term debt.
Mhm.
How do you see it? What role has management played?
So I'm going to assume you guys know a fair amount of the history of ERS. So my firm started working with ERS in 2007. There was one CIO at that time. He left before our contract even started. So my mentor, was someone who Vijay worked with for a long time, was basically this outsourced CIO for about a year. Vijay came on board, staff started to get further built out. So there's been massive success from the staffing standpoint. Additionally, there's been material changes to how the state is funding that system over time. There also was major portfolio changes in the 2014 timeframe, and that's driven a lot of success that has then been, I would say, accelerated or further grown by the fact that they have a large, capable staff now who has delegated authority. So a lot of those granular details are being managed by staff, and there's been some success there. So it's really the holistic picture of their staff, funding, contributions improved. They restructured the portfolio to be very risk focused because, like a lot of public plans, state of Hawaii, ERS has a negative net cash flow. They pay out about -2% of their overall assets every single year. Knowing that's a big headwind, restructuring their portfolio so that headwind does not derail them if they go through another challenging period. So there's been a lot of changes at ERS to put them on a good trajectory going forward. But like a lot of things, it takes time. Each year it gets a little bit better, but there has been success for just structuring the portfolio, which was a lot of what we and VJoy did early on in that history, and them getting more staff to implement day to day, which is adding marginal value each and every year right now.
So what was the value that Makita added to the management development?
Really, the main source I would say Makita drove there was restructuring the portfolio to bring this lens that you really need to, even though you're a long-term investor, the short-term matters, the journey matters. You're a perpetual entity. So repositioning the portfolio to be very risk-focused, knowing that your worst-case scenario is drawdowns when we have net negative cash outflow, repositioning the portfolio. So if that were to occur, it's not going to derail you. Because even, Wes Machida has held various roles at the state, has done his own studies that if we can just narrow that distribution of outcomes, they have a 7% expected return. If we can, even if we don't keep up quite in bull markets, if we don't go down quite as much in bear markets, it makes the health of the system much better over the long term. And that's played out. You can look at calendar year 2022. ERS was the #1 public fund in the United States. They drew all of their benefit payments from one specific portfolio, which is what VJoy and us implemented in 2014, their CRO class. It's called something different now, but every single dollar for benefit payments came out of something that was a decision in 2014 that if something really bad happens, you have some protection there to help continue to grow the portfolio at roughly 7% over time.
Thank you, Colin. I think we are facing some of the similar questions as to the optimization of our risk portfolio. And appreciate hearing the role that you played there at ERS.
Yep, and I mean, you can, whether you're an OHA style system or a public pension or an OPEB trust like ETF, you have both discrete and somewhat subjective liabilities. We know we want to make payments out over time. So part of our role is to help model that over time, to give you the scenarios of what actually may play out. So you can design a portfolio that you think is best to navigate whatever actually does happen. I have no idea what's going to happen over the next 10 years, but I can give you a range of expectations that you then can help manage and design how you're going to spend and conduct grants and the such.
Thank you.
Trustee Galatario.
Thank you, Chair. And mahalo for coming today. You mentioned Wes Machida. Did I hear Wes Machida?
Yes.
And what was it in reference to?
So when he was, I don't believe this is when he was executive director. I think he was when he was at BNF. He did his own study basically confirming our viewpoint that if you can narrow your basically distribution of outcomes, it's better for the budget of the state of Hawaii. It provides more certainty, and that confirmed sort of what we were doing independently, and he conducted that himself as well.
Yeah, sounds like something Wes would do.
Yes.
Now, this is a final thought or a final question, just to get a reflection from you. Does, with regard to ERS or EUTF or any of the portfolios that we're dealing with, is there significant change when there's a change in administration? On the county, on the state, or on the federal level?
It depends. I would say generally not. And the goal is that anything, we want to build processes and policies that can outlive any change and outlive changes in trustees or other forms of administration to persist. You're a perpetual entity, ERS is perpetual. So making sure that you can actually design something that someone else can live with and some other policies, it's not going to conflict with those over time. So that is one of the goals, to make an enduring portfolio and an enduring policy to withstand whatever whatever changes may occur.
Okay, Mahalo, thank you. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, Vijay, you can continue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Makita. Mika on the phone there. Before we bring up our next speaker on the agenda, is it JP Morgan or Goldman that's coming next? JP Morgan, okay. So you guys can come up and start to get set up. Let me just emphasize, trustees, that if and when you decide to work with an investment consultant, whatever search process you go in, even though I appreciate a lot of the things that Colin talked about and the work that had been done previously, I mentioned that I had worked with him. Colin, I'm not making an endorsement for Makita or for yourself today by bringing them in front of you. I think the trustees need to go through a real search where maybe Makita, maybe other investment consultants would be considered for that kind of work. And that would be a decision that you would decide that process internally. So even though I've worked in favorable circumstances with Makita, bringing them here today to explain to you how it's possible to work with an investment consultant, please don't read that as an endorsement by myself at this point for anyone. Okay. With that said, again, and I'm not endorsing these guys, but these guys have been in your portfolio a long time, so they'll talk a little bit about what they do. So this is JP Morgan. So you introduce yourselves and go through your presentation, the 15 minutes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Vjoy. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Jeff Shields. I'm a client advisor in JP Morgan Asset Management institutional business, working with endowments, foundations, public pension funds, sovereign wealth funds across the Western United States. I'm joined by my colleague, Matt Rose. Matt is an investment specialist in our multi-asset solutions business, which is the part of our business that manages the assets for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. I just want to say, ultimately, Matt and I had a great chance to kind of talk about the mission. It's a real privilege to be in the spot that we are. I started off in community development, and one of the things I noted in your mission statement was how you focus on strengths of community. And that's such a privilege to be a part of. So thank you. Knowing we have a short time slot, and quite frankly, I think Colin covered a lot of really valuable information with you all. What we want to do is kind of jump through three things. Number one, talk about kind of a historical snapshot of what we've done on your behalf. Number two, dig into performance. Number three, kind of remind you of what we do at JP Morgan Asset Management, and then ultimately take questions about the market, about current portfolio positioning, all of those things. Any questions? If not, we'll kind of keep moving forward. Thanks so much. So turning to page 2. This is a relationship overview. As Vjoy pointed out, we've been a long-term manager on your behalf since June 30th, 2011. And if you look at back in June 30th, 2011, you funded with $107 million. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, today we have about $153 million under management. The portfolio is distributed $65 million, or you've been to its mission, and we've had excess returns of $9 million net of fees since inception. Just to give you a sense of what we're doing on your behalf, we would kind of consider this a sleeve portfolio. So you have a broader portfolio, and JP Morgan has been tasked with managing what I would call a public equity and fixed income portfolio with a kind of a universe of all liquid investments globally to a benchmark that's 70% equity, 20% core fixed income, and 10% liquid alts. So we manage a sleeve of the portfolio. And I think one of the conversations we've been having with both Vjoy and Ryan has been about how this portfolio works within your greater portfolio. And we're happy to talk more about that. But with that, why don't we dig into performance, Matt?
Thanks, Jeff. And it's great to be here today. I appreciate everyone's time. I'll move to page 3, please, and cover just performance. But before going into performance, I did want to just step back and say, what are we doing for this portfolio to try to generate those returns above and beyond that benchmark that Jeff mentioned earlier on? And really, two things is core to how we focus on this portfolio. One is manager selection, and think of manager selection as using our JP Morgan platform, selecting best-in-class managers that are going to achieve results above and beyond their benchmarks that ultimately rolls up into your strategic asset allocation. So that's really a portfolio construction decision. And the second piece is active asset allocation. And so active asset allocation is tilting the portfolios in and out of various market exposures relative to either where we see opportunities or to manage risk. So both of those levers are at our disposal today that we're using to generate returns above and beyond that passive portfolio's benchmark. Now, we are a team of 100+ investment professionals within multi-asset solutions that is managing this portfolio across the globe. And what we really focus on is that portfolio construction and active asset allocation. Our investment process is grounded in research, so qualitative research, quantitative research, which is ultimately informing decisions. I know we don't have much time to go through the process today, so I won't go through there in detail, but I'm happy to take questions on our investment process as well. So now I say, moving on to how did the portfolio do? How do I evaluate success? Putting myself into your shoes, some of the questions I was thinking, would be asked. And so first and foremost is, one, have you been able to generate returns above and beyond the benchmark? And what you're seeing on this page is rolling return time periods. Everything is net of fees. So over a long time period, we've been able to generate 28 basis points or 0.28% returns above that benchmark using those two levers that I mentioned earlier on. So I think that is a good positive news for the portfolio. When I think about what else we've done more recently, the last 1 year has been really strong as we've been coming out and leaning heavily into a lot of our active managers. In 2019 through 2022, and you can see some of this in the bar graph down below, we actually took an active decision to lower some of the active risk in the portfolios that we just think the market was rewarding active managers, and we're really focused on preserving capital. I think Colin made a good statement just saying, risk management and being able to preserve capital is mission critical, and that's core to our DNA. And we took that stance and saw some modest returns during those time periods. So overall, net, I would think positive results of the portfolio. And we're looking to, as we see, monetary policy higher for rates, for longer narrative, we think this creates a valuation opportunity. And leaning into active manager, we do think will be more rewarding. We've been focused on shaping your portfolio, trimming the number of managers that are holding the lineup to be more concentrated in the active risk that we're taking. Over a long market cycle, this type of portfolio being very broadly diversified, I would expect anywhere from that 25 basis points or 0.25% net excess returns up to 0.75% excess returns would be a success. Any questions on performance before I turn it back over to Jeff?
I think one of the key considerations that the trustees might want to look at, and we've certainly talked with Vjoy and Brian about, is that during this time frame from 2019 to 2022, a lot of investors have had great success in the private markets. So if you look at the portfolios that we manage with both private and public exposure, you saw a lot more of the generation of returns in the private markets while we had this broad stance in the public markets. And again, happy to talk more about that, but mindful of time. If you turn the page to page 4, we just want to remind you all of kind of what our multi-asset solutions team does. And I think it gets really confusing in the marketplace because we all use some of the same words and same language. But ultimately, when I think about what we do with our clients best, is we reach out to them and have conversations about problems or challenges they're looking to solve. And so we call that strategic planning. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is marry our investment platform, our knowledge, our global reach, with ultimately the challenges that our clients are facing. And sometimes that includes working with an investment consultant. Sometimes it includes working with other managers. The variety of kind of approaches is endless. And it's just trying to come up with what works best for the organization. I think just from a time perspective, I'll cover the platform. The global platform at JP Morgan, as you can probably imagine, is quite big. We manage $3.2 trillion of investment management business. What does that give us? That kind of gives us this broad palette to find both information, managers, etc. So we think it's a really valuable palette for that problem solving that we do. One of the things you don't see in our capabilities here is that we're limited to the public market universe. At JP Morgan Asset Management, the way we run a lot of portfolios is using the public market universe, but also outsourcing to third-party private investment managers. So we see the value of having both private and publics work together. In this case, we're only managing the public portfolio.
And I think just to chime in, Jeff, I think the holistic portfolio management, bringing both those manager selection and active asset allocation together is core to our process as well in our DNA, right? It's more than just picking a public or private manager. It's how the whole portfolio lives together. What are the biases based on the underlying managers that are coming together? Are you comfortable with that? Understanding your exposures, et cetera. So I think that is core to our asset management capabilities.
And then ultimately what we found is our long-term, I mean, we've had clients for a long time, and those client relationships evolve over time as their needs evolve. And you can see just in our multi-asset solution group, our average tenure is 15 years. So we still have a number of more years with you, quite frankly. And ultimately what we've seen our success in is working with organizations and kind of evolving our approach to engaging them. So as they add staff, as they add consultants, we change our approach. And so I think it's really key that we're here to help the organization meet their objectives. And as those objectives evolve, we want to be called upon for whatever is necessary to change. So if you turn to the next page, on page 5, we'll finish up here. This is just the palette of JP Morgan Asset Management. As organizations grow and change, sometimes they just pick us for a specific investment management mandate, whether it's fixed income or equities. Sometimes they come back to us with a new approach to our multi-asset solutions group. In our conversations with Ryan and Vjoy, there seems to be a lot of ideas about how to best fit in all of these managers that you currently have, and we just want to be part of that solution. And with that, can we take questions? Great. Questions?
Are there any questions, members? Okay,
Maybe just one question, Chair. So can you talk specifically about how you make decisions for the OHA portfolio and what's in the OHA portfolio, why, and, over the years, or if you could give an example, and I know time is short, but, just give us an idea of why the portfolio, specifically OHA's portfolio, looks the way it does. How do you make that decision? How do you communicate that to OHA?
Sure. So let me take a stab at that one. It's a great question. So it all starts with understanding the overall objective. And in this case, it's outperform that benchmark. And how is the most efficient way for us to be able to do that and achieve results? It comes down to our research teams as a starting point. So we have a dedicated manager research team that are looking at across the JP Morgan universe, what are the managers that are out there that are available on the active side, on the passive side, and what makes sense to align towards that strategic allocation of 70, 20, 10. And so the JP Morgan platform has over 600 strategies. We culminate that down from usually anywhere from 10 to 15 strategies in a client's portfolio. And then we're thinking about where are we in the business cycle? Where's the macro environment? Do I need to dial up active risk or dial down active risk? And we may either formally more broadly diversify by adding some other managers, or we may concentrate some of the positions, which we've done more recently. And now we have 8 core managers in the portfolio as we see a rich active environment for managers. That all comes down from the research from our manager research team, just our overall macro view. Then in addition, the question becomes, how do I tilt the portfolio appropriately? And that's where we're saying business cycle, what regime are we in? Where are the dislocations in the market? So for example, maybe you don't have high yield fixed income in this core benchmark because it's benchmarked to an ag fixed income benchmark. We will opportunistically leg into high yield exposure when we see a dislocation or an opportunity to achieve additional yield or income from that exposure. So it's actively managing the overall exposures once you have that neutral starting point. And that all comes from our investment process and research.
In page 13 gives a historical perspective over the last several years. And we're happy to share more data about the changes, et cetera, that we've made.
are there any other questions? Trustee Galutario.
I got a question. Thank you, Chair. And this is not a gotcha question, but does Native or indigenous entities like the Office of Foreign Affairs and culture, does that factor into a decision on the portfolio, or is it pretty sterile? You're just looking for performance. How does that work?
Well, it's a really interesting question. I would say that ultimately financial materiality, where there's issues around culture, et cetera. I mean, if you think about the governance of companies and how they manage themselves, those ultimately often determine financial outcomes. So I would say, I'm not sure to the culture of this organization, does it apply? But as we look at investments and understand the financial materiality of, whether it's, any kind of relevant fact is going to go into our managers' decisions around positions, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Jeff. And just to be very specific to answer the question, on your portfolio today, there's no hard constraint that's like, don't invest in this specific company or this specific region or this specific sector. Some clients do have those constraints, and that's when we'll apply that to our day-to-day portfolio management.
Does that answer the question? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, if not, are they, well, thank you,
Thank you for everyone's time.
thank you, Jeff and Matthew.
Bring up Goldman Sachs.
Thank you.
Aloha. Oh, sorry. This. Oh. Okay. Aloha. Thank you so much for having us today. Mahalo for the opportunity. I'm Mary Lovejoy, and I have responsibility for the relationship between OHA and Goldman Sachs. I also have the privilege of servicing relationships across Hawaii, and including the state of Hawaii and the EUTF. I'm joined by my colleague Jeremy Weltmer, who's a lead portfolio manager and oversees partnership portfolios in the Americas for our multi-asset solutions business. So we're going to aim to cover three things today. One is to reintroduce ourselves, who we are, what our firm does, and then briefly cover the history of the relationship between OHA and Goldman Sachs. We'll also give an update on OHA's current investments with Goldman Sachs, and then finally, we'll try to outline a path forward for how we think OHA can maximize the value that it's getting from our firm and take full advantage of the resources that we can bring to bear on your behalf. So if you turn to page 2, Goldman Sachs Asset Management is the now $2.9 trillion fiduciary investment arm of the firm. We manage money on behalf of a wide range of clients, including sophisticated institutions such as OHA, as well as private wealth individuals and third-party platforms. I would say we have a long and successful track record spanning not only public markets, so public equity and fixed income, but also alternative investments. So you think of private equity, private credit, hedge funds, and real assets. The last thing I'll just say is I believe that our long relationship with OHA, dating back over 20 years when OHA made its first private markets investment with us, I think that's really allowed us to gain a deep understanding and appreciation of the importance of your mission and to the people of Hawaii, and also just help us better understand your goals and objectives. And we'd really like to make sure that we're continuing to do that.
Oh, everybody wants to see.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I would say we remain deeply committed to that relationship. We want to grow and evolve with you over time. I would say that the relationship has been reduced in recent years, but we hope to rebuild and grow with you going forward. Final thing that I'll note before we move on. So if you move to page 4, I would just say that our firm has a deep and strong commitment to working in the Hawaiian Islands. So we're privileged to manage over $1 billion on behalf of Hawaiian institutions. We also work hard to support the local economy and community wherever we can. So one example of that I'd highlight is our partnership with local small businesses providing education and capital. We're proud to partner with over 20 small businesses in the region, and those businesses employ over 550 people. So let me pause there. Happy to take any questions. We'll keep it short, and then I can turn it over to my colleague to review the current investments and then take us through potential ways that we can partner together moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, hearing none, continue.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss not only what we currently have in the portfolio, as well as ways that OHA can better maximize the value of its relationship with Goldman Sachs. So when we, closer to the mic, got it. So when we think about partnership, it's honestly, it very much rhymes with what we've previously heard from Makita and from JP Morgan. We endeavor to sit on the same side of the table as the trustees and to develop solutions as a fiduciary that solve whatever problems the organization faces. And exactly as our colleagues from JP Morgan mentioned, those evolve as the institution's needs evolve. And when we've been thinking through places where not only the current Goldman portfolio is positioned for OHA, but also places where we can help going forwards, the private markets are one of the places that we see the most room to impact outcomes for the portfolio. And on page 6, we lay out one of the core justifications for why. In many cases, the dollars speak for themselves. So when we look at the performance of public markets versus private markets over any long period of time, the private markets have substantially outperformed. And that's true on the private equity side, which is where the majority of OHA's Goldman investments are right now, as well as on the credit or fixed income side of things. And the dollars are honestly materially different. So, I mean, over the very long 20-year period, we're looking at 8% versus 14%. Not quite double, but getting close to double the returns that one earns in the private markets, and that compounds over time. So when we turn to OHA's current investments with Goldman, so this is on page 7, I think we're very proud to say that all of the funds in which OHA has invested with Goldman have returned gains. And we see that has turned every dollar that has been called into those funds into $1.53. And in terms of what that means in dollar impact, I mean, of the $40.5 million that OHA has committed to Goldman funds, that's turned into $62 million, a little more than that. And it's been a long and deep engagement across a variety of strategies going back to 2004. And when we look at that portfolio, not only has it turned that $1 into $1.53, it's also actually returned a lot of that back into the portfolio for reinvestment and other opportunities. And it's nowhere close to done. So, I mean, when we look at the companies that are all baked into those investments across different private equity strategies, only about 55% of those have gone from the private fund purchasing a company to selling it and returning the capital. And so not only does the existing book of business provide continued room for growth, but we also see lots of opportunities to deepen the partnership on the private side between OHA and Goldman Sachs. So when we move over to the next page, we lay out a little bit of why. And we're very proud to say that looking across our strategies, Goldman really looks to be a best-in-class provider across any financial need that a large, sophisticated institution might have around the world. And so we offer a broad range of private strategies as well as public strategies. And our multi-asset solutions team is positioned to help institutions manage across all of those strategies. And the idea is that what we do is we partner with organizations where we come together to find guidelines to structure our engagement. And based on those guidelines, we then take that structure and invest on behalf of those organizations. And what we show here is that the tools that we have at our disposal really allow us to drive differentiated, high quality outcomes for our partners. Now, taking a step back, one of the questions that we've been sitting with in looking to serve OHA better is what's the way to build a privates program that will compound capital at those higher rates of return in private markets? And there are 3 core principles that we think really drive a high quality private markets program. One is having a lot of managers in the portfolio. And that's partly to access alpha wherever it is or outperformance versus the benchmarks. But it's also partly as a way to make sure that an organization isn't overly concentrating its risk on any one provider. The second is consistency. I mean, every single year there are new private funds in the market. And in order to make sure that there's a diversification in the portfolio, an organization has to be committing every single year. And then that third point is diversification more broadly. So it's not just managers, it's not just committing every year, it's also being allocated to a broad range of strategies. Now, On the next page, when we take a look back at OHA's historical commitment to privates, while there has been long-term engagement, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to have been part of that since 20 years ago with OHA, when we think about what a theoretical approach would be for blank sheet of paper, what the best way is to design a private markets program, there's a little more sort of consistency of every single year making a new commitment. And what that means is that looking back at the track record for OHA's strategies, while we think that they have done well, and while we think that they have delivered results that we're proud of, there's room to do better. And the question that we sit with is, how can we empower the organization to do that and empower the board to do that? And we can do this working with the board, working with CIOs or with consultants. I mean, we have lots of different frameworks under which we work. But in some ways, our thought is, how can we change the default setting? How can we make it so the board has a framework in place that is designed to accomplish its objectives automatically? Because exactly to the trustee's point earlier, there's a 1,000-page agenda. There's a lot that the board has to be focused on. And the question is, how can an organization like Goldman give the board leverage? And leverage in terms of being able to focus its attention just where and when it's needed. And that's what we lay out on the next page here, which is maybe we can move towards a framework where we set up guidelines. And what the board does, working with consultants, working with the investment team in-house, is to figure out what the right rules of the road are. And says, okay, Goldman, here are the rules of the road. Go implement those. Go make sure that the board's will is done in private markets with ongoing review and monitoring and consent on a strategy by strategy basis, but changing the default setting in a way so that the board can focus on the private markets when it's time to change the rules of the road, rather than having an ongoing need to be in the market committing.
Chair, do you have a question?
Go ahead.
Did you have a question?
Oh,
Oh, okay, sorry.
thank you. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, and we think that the Goldman platform is uncommonly differentiated for that, and that's what we lay out on the last page here, which is that we think that we have the right tools, that have the right teams and resources and strategies to go and implement that on behalf of and alongside the board. We think about partnership as a really holistic kind of engagement, where it isn't just driving investment outcomes. That's obviously critically important to making sure that organizations can accomplish their objectives. But partnership also is advising, it's guiding, it's answering questions, it's being responsive. And we endeavored to be the right kind of partner to OHA and to the board and to the staff. And we think that shifting the default setting from right now of being available on call, providing guidance in an ongoing way, but not having a specific set of objectives that have been laid out, that we can move to a mandate where the board says to us, please go do this for us and come back and tell us how it's going. And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Trustee Aquino.
Thank you. I appreciate that insight that you've given, that we relate to you more in a default manner than in an intentional mandate. Do you have could you give us a couple of examples of mandates that might be appropriate for us to assign you to?
Absolutely. So my team manages portfolios for institutions around the world, and there are a couple examples that come to mind as being very analogous to what could make sense for OHA. So there's a large public pension that we work with that has given us an objective of a roughly 50% public, 50% private portfolio, where we lay out the strategies we should allocate to. And we lay out what the portfolio is looking to achieve in the public sleeve. Now, I think that because OHA has an existing public markets program, we would suggest maybe a little bit more of a focus on the private side rather than the public side. And there's a continuum of 50-50 public-private to, we have one portfolio that my team manages, which is 90% private, and we can go even higher than that. But what the mandate is that there's a rules of the road where we say, let's allocate this percentage over the long run to all these strategies, whether it's regular private equity or private equity secondaries, which is a strategy of buying other investors' stakes in funds from a number of years back, or private credit, private real estate, private infrastructure. We lay out what the targets are, and then we go and we implement those. And the portfolios that I'm thinking of here that we currently manage, one is about $300 million. One is close to $1 billion. And we have different strategies like this for a variety of kinds of institutions.
Thank you. And my assumption is you're telling us our returns will be greater with a more intentional mandate-driven management.
We can never make promises about returns. Markets will go where they're going to go, but we think that in terms of setting ourselves up best for success, having a diversification and a consistency and potentially a higher allocation to privates is the approach that we would suggest to boost returns, both in absolute dollars as well as returns per risk.
And thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Hakeem.
Well, Mr. Chair, my question is, first of all, thank you guys for being here, all of you. Question, why was our funds reduced? And who gave that directive and what was the reason?
So I think that one of the challenges of the current structure is that in many ways, without having a framework where the board has said, go accomplish these long-term targets, what our engagement looks like is coming each year with new funds and saying, this is available, this is in the market, this is something that the board should consider. And the board has a 1,000-page agenda that doesn't always come up. And so I think that in that sense, it's hard for us to say exactly where things fell through the gaps. And so what our solution is to say, you know what, let's change the default setting. Where as opposed to the board having to consider everything that we bring up, we can instead say, here is what we would do. We need consent for what we think is the appropriate allocation long run.
That's fair. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, we're grateful to be here and look forward to
Thank
spending
you.
more time with all of you. Thank you.
Wait, let's see, Mary and Jeremy.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, trustee. That concludes our material.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Okay, so members, we're gonna move on to, we're gonna move on to item C. C and D, we're gonna take those action items first because they relate to action item RM 2410. So we're gonna go on to action item RM 2411, which is an Office of Foreign Affairs micro funding program to alleviate water bills and property tax costs for Native Hawaiian farmers. Has anybody signed up to talk on this action item?
Yes, we have OHA beneficiary Jermaine Myers.
Okay, so Jermaine, just to reiterate, this item is the approval of an OHA micro funding program to alleviate water bills and property tax costs for Native Hawaiian farmers. So I will turn the floor over to Jermaine Myers.
Mahalo, Chair. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. For the record, my name is Jermaine Myers. I'm a Native Hawaiian, Nanakuli Hawaiian Homestead lessee and an OHA beneficiary. When I looked at this, I was very pleased to see this on the agenda for today for assistance with regards to Native Hawaiian farmers statewide for property tax as well as water bills. I just wanted to highlight that I know it's for agriculture for farmers, but I attended DHHL's meeting in Kona yesterday and Monday, and there was a lot of conversation about the high water bill for residential as well, most especially in Kona. So DHHL was addressing that. And also for Ho'olehua Molokai, they are significantly higher than the rest of us. And so I'm just hoping that later on you can look into that if you're concerned about water bills and how it's been impacting the families statewide. And so that's what I basically wanted to share. I'm just happy to see that this is the direction that OHA is taking. Mahalo.
Johanna.
Mahalo, Chair, Trustees. As I explained at the last BOT meeting, we are starting to pivot, making sure that tactics that are coming before the board are aligned with Mana'i Mauliola. And as we have begun to bring on our directors for the different strategic directions, we're getting very precision-like about how we want to address the various strategic initiatives outlined in our strategic plan. The first of those initiatives is to look at Aina Momona and economic stability. And so this action item, RM 2411, is seeking the approval of the board for this program, as well as an appropriation of $140,000. At this time, I'm going to have the Director of OEV Wellbeing and Aina Momona, Ku'ike Kamakia Ohelo, to provide you the details.
Hello, my chair and trustees. Mahalo for the opportunity to present to you folks this morning. The Mahi'ai microfunding program is designed to help Native Hawaiian farmers by reducing their financial stress from high property taxes as well as water. You know, I really, I come from the agricultural background and as a farmer myself, you know, these are burdens that are placed on the farmer, and I can tell you, high stress, you know, so this particular support encourages new farmers, you know, as well as helps existing ones by feeding funds or freeing up funds that would help prevent, I guess, the stresses. Again, let me just come back down. You know, if we take a look at the AI item in front of you, I just want to point out the tables here, beginning on page 2. When it comes to water and utility costs, you know, in Ho'olehua Molokai as well as in Kona, as our testifier explained, you know, water is everything when it comes to growing food. Down here at the bottom of page 2, for simply put, for an acre of kalo, so to grow an acre of kalo, we utilize approximately 100,000 gallons of water to 200,000 gallons of water per month. And then in bold here, what that translates to is the total cost per year is approximately $5,600. And that burden is again on the farmer. And with the market rate of kalo today at approximately $2.50 a pound, yeah, most kalo farmers are operating in the red. And I want to turn our attention to the next page, page 3, and that table. Out here, I mean, in this table, we outline, you know, the tax costs for agricultural lands. Then at the bottom of that table, it says to calculate the annual property tax, multiply the assessed value of the property by the application, by the applicable rate. For example, a farm on the Big Island is assessed at 500,000. The annual property tax would be approximate $4,675. Property tax is paid off twice a year. And what that means is each payment would amount to $2,300. That burden again is transferred on the farmer. How do we expect Native Hawaiian farmers to produce food for not only their families and communities, but for the Lahui? So from my strategy, Yeah, you know what? Okay, and then if I can turn the folks' attention to the next page, page 4, our time frame for this proposed item. Here we are today, the 22nd of May, and I'm going to start here with your grace, and if it pleases this board, you know, the approval of the microfund, and then next up on our time frame tomorrow at the greater Board of Trustee meeting to ratify your guys' decision today. And then moving forward, yeah, from the 24th until mid-June, my team and I will be further developing out the Mahi'ai Microfund program and then revisiting the timeline and as well as developing the criteria for application. Currently, our intention is to utilize OHA's grant processes. Yeah, OHA was real successful. Mahalo to the grants team when it came to the Kanaho grant. And we believe this program would be a success by replicating that process. So mahalo to the grants team again. And then lastly, here on our timeline, we have a few names of 501c3s to assist in administering this proposed funding. But again, by mid-June, we'll identify and engage with 501c3s to administer this microfund grant. Yeah. And then, you want to take that?
Mahalo Kuike. So if approved by the board, this is subject to the budget realignment in AIRM 2410. Our recommendation obviously is the approval of the AI and approval for administration to engage with a 501c3 to administer the Mahi'ai Fund program. Alternatives for the board is to take no action or realign a different amount for the Mahi'ai Microfund program, or C, explore alternative approaches to addressing the immediate needs of Native Hawaiian farmers to start up, sustain, or scale their agricultural operations. I do want to draw your attention to the references on how we are aligning this AI to strategy 4. 4.3, increasing the restoration of Native Hawaiian cultural sites, landscapes, kula'iwi, and traditional food systems. We have outlined for the board very specific impact targets and measures. Specifically, we are looking at increased agricultural production, tracking the rise in the production of traditional Hawaiian crops, such as kalo, uala, ulu, as well as other native plants used for food, medicinal, and cultural purposes. For your reference, I'm on page 6. Water bill relief impact. We want to evaluate how this relief has impacted farmers and their agricultural practices. We are also going to be evaluating property tax relief impact, assessing the impact of property tax relief on the financial stability of farmers and their capacity to invest or reinvest in themselves and their businesses. We are also looking at increasing access to capital and credit for community strengthening of Native Hawaiian businesses and individuals. And we plan to measure this by increasing business revenues, measuring their increase in revenues for businesses receiving support, indicating enhanced financial health and growth potential. The number of new businesses established as a result of this AI. We're hoping to be able to track the number of new Native Hawaiian businesses established with the help of increased capital, access to capital. Employment growth. We want to be able to measure the increase in employment with Native Hawaiian businesses, reflecting business expansion and economic strengthening. And then lastly, we want to increase the number of successful community strengthening Native Hawaiian-owned businesses. Tracking the number of new Native Hawaiian-owned businesses established because of the help of this program. Revenue growth, being able to monitor the increase in revenue for Native Hawaiian-owned businesses, indicating financial success and growth. And community engagement, tracking the number of businesses involved in community projects, partnerships, or events that strengthen the community. At this time, we'll take any questions.
Trustee Ahuna.
Thank you, Chair. No, I just wanted to move this action item if we could. I just wanted to just start this conversation by moving it. The microfund, the Mahi'ai microfund program. Thank you. That's all. I just wanted to move it.
Sorry, it's to approve an Office of Hawaiian Affairs Mahi'ai micro funding program to alleviate water bills and property tax costs for Native Hawaiian farmers statewide. Is that, Trustee Ahuna moves that?
Second.
And it's seconded by Trustee Alapa. So we're still discussing it. Trustee Souza.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted on the record that I fully support this. This is awesome. It aligns with our strategic plan, for sure. There's other factors besides these, that come into play, right? For farmers nowadays, coconut rhinoceros beetle, one that's affected our crops. I do understand because I do own ag lots as well. And it's not even the planting and the harvesting, it's maintaining and trying to keep that thing away. And that takes away from our resources as well. And so the $5,000, I don't think it's sufficient at this point. So I would like to ask, because I know in item B, we are doing a realignment. So I would like to ask if there is a budget and if it's possible to kind of create a threshold, because the only reason why I say that is because, I mean, someone who owns a 1 acre parcel of ag versus someone who owns a 6 acre parcel of ag, the situation is different, property taxes alone, water bill. And so, thank you, Ramona, if you can kind of help to clarify if there is enough funds. What I would like to propose is that there be a threshold, start be 5,000, potentially up to $20,000, if that's possible, and if there is the budget for that.
For fiscal 24, if the AI 2410, the budget realignment number 2 is approved, we don't have any excess funds in budget in fiscal 24. However, we do have a budget carryover, a grant carryover from the prior fiscal years. So I will be bringing that to the board in June. And so we'll have the exact number of funds that we can move forward with. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Trustee Aquino.
Thank you. A question. For a Native Hawaiian farmer to qualify for the microfund program, what would constitute high property taxes or high water bill? How will that be determined? The reason I'm asking is I don't want our Native Hawaiian farmers to fall under the threshold. And I'm curious as to who makes these decisions and how they make these decisions.
Well, the water rates are different under different things.
Yes, and as Chair pointed out, water rates vary from island to island. And I would add to that property taxes is a hot issue amongst the counties now, with various proposals being floated both at the councils and in the mayor's offices. So just to sum up my question, how do we determine for our Native Hawaiian farmers what the threshold is, what constitutes overly high property taxes or overly high water rates so that they can qualify?
Mahalo, trustee, for the question. So we're not gonna have criteria to qualify or disqualify based off of extremely high water. It's based off of what they're being asked to pay. And we are looking at doing it in a reimbursement fashion. So they would pay their water bill, they would submit their receipt of payment, and then OHA would then reimburse. So to Trustee Souza's point, it would be based on what they're submitting, and we would set the threshold to the amount that we are able to pay as a reimbursable.
So OHA, someone on your staff will set the threshold.
Correct. We will put together a working committee to create the criteria with our grants, with fiscal, to come up with that criteria.
Okay, and don't read my question, by the way, as any doubt of support for this. I just want it to work. And I don't want people to get, I don't want people to fall through the cracks. But I would like to express my strong support for this action, and not only in and of itself, but because it shows us really taking seriously ways to empower our Lahui economically. And I appreciate this interpretation of the master plan. Thank you.
Mahalo, trustee.
Trustee Lindsay.
Thanks. I just want to remind our trustees that our administration did such a wonderful job on the Kanaho grants, giving out monies to the devastated people in Maui for the fires. And it was a good example of what we're capable of doing. And the good thing about giving out the monies ourselves, OHA, is letting the people know what we are truly doing for them. When we contract outside nonprofits to distribute monies for OHA, not all of the recipients know that this is OHA money. So I really am happy that administration came up with this idea. First of all, it's a great idea, Kuike, because our people need help in every direction of their lives. But more importantly, it's important that they know that OHA is standing behind them, trying to help them in every way, trying to fulfill our vision of improving the health and well-being of our people. So I just wanted to say that. Mahalo.
Trustee Ahuna.
Thank you, Chair. Lindsay, for those words. I just wanted to reiterate about, because we talked about threshold on who should get it. And I think if they're native Hawaiian and they live in Hawaii, farming in Hawaii, I think that's the threshold right there. So this is their land. This is their, I mean, how do they benefit? So we're not looking at like everywhere should be people who qualify if you're farming. I just think that's the threshold. Thank you.
Go ahead, Stacy.
Mahalo, Chair. I just wanted to thank Chair Lindsay for her comments. You know, one of the things I think we can do much better at when we do work with third parties to disperse our OHA dollars is to condition the awards by saying that they have to make sure that OHA is being credited, or folks, you know, in the public know where the source of funding is coming from. I just wanted Kuike to talk a little bit about the 501c3 as it's explained here, and the reason why the 501c3 was the option. But we can still discuss, Chair.
Mahalo kapoana. As articulated here on page 4 in the time frame, at the very bottom of this table, our team will identify and engage with a 501c3. And the reason why we are going this route is that way, because for my team and I, it makes no sense to burden our farmers with having to pay tax, because if we administer directly from OHA to our beneficiaries, then the burden of tax lies on the recipient. So that's why we decided to go this route and through a 501c3, because it makes no sense for our beneficiaries to pay tax on a tax relief fund that they will be receiving. So moving forward, Chair Lindsay and trustees, we will ensure that we do everything in our authority to ensure that whomever we're partnering with in administering our funds, that we place conditions that OHA is recognized as the benefactor.
And just for clarity's sake, the Kanaho grant and the reason why beneficiaries were not taxed is because there was an exemption given because it was emergency relief due to the fires. So that's the distinguishing factor.
Yes, we actually had a tax opinion from our tax professional that that there's a cold relief in the RS code that relieves the 1099 reporting to recipients of grants for disaster and emergency financial aid.
Call for the question.
There's no further questions. Can I get a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye.
trustee Akaka,
Aye, and I would like to potentially do a site visit in the future to Mahi'ai recipients. Mahalo.
trustee Akina,
Aye.
trustee Alapa,
Aye.
trustee Galataria.
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay,
Aye.
trustee Souza.
Aye.
Trustee Trask is excused. Chair Whitehay.
Yes.
8 yes votes.
The motion passes. So we're moving on now, members. Yeah, let me once again.
Mahalo.
Reiterate that we're moving on to action item 2412, which is the approval of the implementation of an online Native Hawaiian owned cohort program. And has anyone signed up?
Yes, we have Jermaine Myers.
Okay, just to, out of consideration for the fact that I took it out of order, I just want to reiterate that this is the approval of the implementation of an online Native Hawaiian owned cohort program. And I will turn this over to Jermaine Myers.
Mahalo, Chair. Again, for the record, my name is Jermaine Myers. I'm a Native Hawaiian, Nanakuli Hawaiian Homestead lessee and an OHA beneficiary for beneficiary advocacy and empowerment. And because of empowerment, that I'm very excited to see this agenda item. It was awesome to see that there will be a Native Hawaiian 8A cohort program online for 6 months, and that it will help 20 small businesses with this training, which will help to increase the fact that we have only currently 25 Native Hawaiian 8A organizations. So with that, I'm hoping that all 20 go through the program and take it seriously and increase our body of businesses to 45. And my only concern and that I wanted to share with you about this program is that I understand that political temperament and political connections, I should say, usually helps NHO organizations. And so I'm hoping that OHA will evaluate the businesses after they complete this program and truly support. Doesn't have to be financial, but it will support politically these organizations to move them forward to get to the point where they can receive and execute government contracts on a high level, on a high level. But in the online program, I'm hoping you teach them about staying pono so that I don't see any of them, get complications with corruption or investigations. We don't need that in our Native Hawaiian community. I saw what happened recently to one of our Native Hawaiian organization, our 8A organization, and I was really sad to see that. I'm hoping they come through it, through the investigation. But again, I applaud OHA for taking this direction. Mahalo, Chair. Mahalo, trustees.
Thank you, Jermaine. Okay, Trustee Ahuna. Wait, I'm sorry, Dan. Has anybody else? Is there any other testimony?
Oh, no further testimony.
Okay. Trustee Ahuna.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I too would like to talk about this program. I think, first of all, I think this is the most amazing thing that is happening right now. And to hear about educating businesses for 8A, that's one of the most hardest applications that you could go through. And these 8As is so important. Kauai is a hub. The reason why I'm bringing this up today is I wanted to let our administrative staff know that PMRF is actually coming. Their lease is ending, and right now they're holding open public testimony about their lease. I think the things that Jermaine said where, OHA can get in the middle of things. I think this is how we should be leveraging Native Hawaiian organizations. I think this is the conversations that we can be having. So I just wanted to let you guys know that right now, PMRF is holding open public testimony for their lease that is coming up. They're asking for another 100 years. So there's a lot we can talk about, even the amount they're getting, the lease, how much are they paying for their leases every month, how many Native Hawaiian organizations are actually really getting all these opportunities. But thank you for having this, and I just wanted to make everybody aware, especially on Kauai. We really need your help. I'm not saying they're bad people or anything like that. All I'm saying is this is a time that we need to get in the middle of it. And yes, we can hold these people accountable to making sure our Native Hawaiian organizations are the ones getting chosen. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ahuna. And with that, I know what you want to do, Trustee Ahuna.
Yes, I would like to move for the approval of a 6-month online Native Hawaiian-owned NHO Academy, a statewide cohort program comprising of a sequential learning modules and customized mentoring designed to assist 20 Native Hawaiian small businesses to successfully navigate and complete the federal 8A certification process in order to be eligible to compete for federal contracts.
Second.
It's been moved by Trustee Ahuna, seconded by Trustee Souza. Any discussion on that motion? Trustee Alapa.
Yes, I'd like to know who are the 20 Native Hawaiian businesses that we're looking at?
Aloha,
Is it just
trustee.
anyone who has a business as long as there's 20 of them and they apply?
Aloha, Trustee Alapa. So on page 3, we have at least the beginnings of eligibility criteria. If it is the desire of this board to approve it, we will definitely be working with our grants, PAIA, as well as our finance department to create more eligibility criteria. But at the very highest level, we're looking at Native Hawaiian owned businesses. They can be products and or services based in Hawaii, has completed a Hawaii-based business accelerator, and has an active certificate of compliance. The second one would be a Native Hawaiian-owned business, product and or service based in Hawaii, a member of the Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce, and has an active certificate of compliance. And why those two at a very high level were called out is because if you're in a current business accelerator, or you're with the Chamber of Commerce, we're really trying to mitigate as much as possible businesses that may not be in good standing. And many of these businesses already have some wraparound supports around them if you're in an accelerator program. And that's everything from business planning to sourcing assistance, an expanded network of other businesses and mentors and coaches. So again, we want to bring in Native Hawaiian businesses that have a support system as they go through our program as well. But there will be additional criteria that are applied once we get the approval, Trustee.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? If not, can I get a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye.
Trustee Akaka,
Aye.
Trustee Akina,
Aye.
Trustee Alapa,
Aye.
Trustee Galataria,
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay,
Aye.
Trustee Souza,
Aye.
Trustee Trask is excused, Chair Waihe'e.
Yes.
8 yes votes.
The action
Mahalo
item
nui.
passes, and we will now move to our item B. This is action item RM 2410, which is the biennium budget for the fiscal biennium periods FY 24 and 25 realignment number 2. Has anybody signed up to testify on this action item?
Yes, Jermaine Myers.
Okay, I will turn the floor over to Jermaine Myers.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, my name is Jermaine Myers. I went through the packet And I'm assuming that this was the conclusion, but I'm looking forward to the presentation to see if it's true. That the budget is for the $60 million. And I'm sorry, 68.5 current budget, and that it's going to be reduced to 60 million for a savings of 8.597 million. So I'm looking forward to seeing the presentation if I got lost in the presentation, in the packet information, but I'm just excited to see some of the things that were being saved and some of the things that were being increased. So thank you, Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jermaine. And with this, I'll turn it over to Pohana and let her,
Mahalo, Chair. At this time, I'm going to have Ramona Hink and Grace Chen speak to the board regarding OHA's biennium budget for the fiscal biennium periods fiscal year 24 and 25, realignment number 2, core and non-core realignments.
Good morning, Chair Wahe, Vice Chair Alapa, and trustees and esteemed colleagues. To my right is Grace Chen. She's the financial and reporting analyst and co-prepared this budget realignment for us. So just a brief background. The fiscal biennial budget for the fiscal year 24 and 25 was approved on June 29th, 2023. Subsequent to that, action item 2404, budget realignment number 1 was approved February of 2024. And that budget realignment was for fiscal 24 only. So this budget realignment number 2 is for fiscal 24 and 25. Some highlights for the budget realignment for number 2. For fiscal 24, the core overall budget was decreased by $34,000, and that was mainly due to repurposing of budgeted funds in the programs to other expense categories or to other programs within the core. So it's pretty budget neutral. The non-core budget, the overall budget decrease was by about $408,000, and that was mainly due to Haku'oni's Lot C repairs. For fiscal 25, the core overall budget increased by $948,000, mainly due to the increase in personnel and fringe, equipment, and offset by a decrease in grants. Non-core overall budget increased by 1.7 million, mainly due to Haku'oni's improvement and demolition of Lot A and E. So if you have any questions regarding this realignment, any detailed questions, then Grace and I are here to answer them.
Trustee Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ramona. My question is, are we approving this realignment because it also affects our grants that we're going to be discussing? Is that part of the realignment,
Yes.
the grants budget?
Well, the grants budget stays same except for the reclassifications that were outlined in the budget realignment. So we can go through that.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Thank you.
So the increase in the grants budget actually is now going to be increased by the Mani'ai grant of $140,000, but that wasn't in the original budget, the biennial budget. The reclassifications in the grants categories were 5.3 million from the proviso grants, which are the general and matching funds, to the community grants. And that's just to make it easier in accounting to create the PRs, the POs, the invoicing, the journal entries, so you don't have to go between the different accounts. So that was just ease of accounting. Let's see, there was a reclassification of 50,000 from the Ahuhui out-of-state grants to the in-state. $70,921 reclassification from the CEO sponsorship to the BOT sponsorship. And that was implemented because of a state auditor's recommendation in their 1808 report. and a 1.5 million reclassification from OHANA grants to economic stability grants, and that's to accommodate the action items that are coming through later.
Thanks, Ramona.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Trustee Aquino.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ramona. If the board approves this realignment, how does that affect the spending, coming below the spending limits for 2024 and 2025? Will we still be below the spending limits?
Absolutely. So for fiscal 24, for core, because we're just basically looking at core right now, we are under the spending limit by about $35,000. So we're just sliding through there. For fiscal 25, we have about 720,000 of excess in the spending limit, and that's just to accommodate Capuana's strategic plans coming up in 25.
Trustee Aquino.
Yeah, thank you. You also have mentioned some of the uses with regard to Hakuone. Are these uses part of following any master plan? Is there any relationship to a master plan?
Tim Wong's here,
Okay.
the land
Thank you.
director.
Thank you, Tim.
Morning, trustees. Thank you for your.
And I'll appreciate if you can highlight the expenditures for Hakuone.
Sure. So I think in a previous meeting, we did talk about some of the repairs that we wanted to do at Hakuone. But I think one of the first things that we wanted to focus on was the strategic planning. And so once the strategic plan is identified and we come up with our governance and policy and procedures, it will align, I think, with the strategic plan. But part of the strategic plan is like, or actually what we're doing now is really look at the highest and best use for some of the properties. So the majority of this cost actually relates to some of the demolition of the APHIS building. And we have a preliminary number for that. That number ranges between 600 to $1 million just to take down the building. But again, it depends on what type of materials are in the building. And then after that, started putting that parking lot back to a usable condition, which is basically paving the parking lot. So I think that's the majority of the cost that we're asking for, as well as there's some other things that we want to do on Lot A to help activate Lot A. Currently, we don't have a permanent restroom facility on that lot. And so part of that is to look at that, take a look and see what we can build out there so we can make it a place that we can gather people and have people there in a more comfortable situation.
So trustee, in short, the increases that you're seeing at Hakuone are safety repairs and demolition so that we can start creating revenue on some of those properties that right now we just have old buildings that are not in use.
So they're not in line with trying to follow any master plan per se. They are more or less custodial things we need to do if we're going to be in a position to move forward with any kind of development.
Correct.
And I take it these the particular renovations and so forth that we're going to be doing are items that we've basically talked about at various times, both here and here. at the
Yes,
board.
trustee.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Trustee Galatario.
Yeah, is there a timeline attached to these moves here? In terms of, because if I recall, the AP's building has some kind of historical context, right? So what's the timeline on these action items?
So one of the things that KP was talking about was, I think Lot L, which is the repurposing of the warehouse. That should be completed in August of this year. So that process has already been started. And then after, once that's completed, that building would be safe to lease out from a safety perspective, right? So fire system, siding. The APHIS building, that we're doing an RFP for it, and we're getting through some of the details, which incorporates some additional studies that we need to do. So Once we go through that and identify the criteria, we are going to post it, and that's it's still to be determined because we're still looking for a report that we have to go out and procure related to some possibly hazmat materials that were hazard materials that are in the building. We're hoping, I think whenever it gets to procurement, I think, and just sort of identifying some of these issues, some of the things that we've come across in the past is that some of the vendors are really busy because a lot of the vendors are focusing on Maui. And so to procure something like that is what some of the challenges that we're going through now. But we are targeting as soon as possible.
Just a reminder, Fisherman's Wharf took us 1.5 years to demolish.
If there are any other questions?
I have a question, Jim.
Trustee Lindsay.
So where is the expense to fix Lot L? Which is gonna be $1 million plus.
It's coming from the commercial properties from Hako'oni's.
But in this
Yes,
realignment?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to bring it to the trustees' attention that we do have over $1 million to just shore up Lot L building.
Okay. So if that's,
Chair
if
Whitehead,
that's-
Chair Whitehead,
Trustee Akaka, oh,
mahalo. Just going back to also regarding the mahi'ai matters. I also want to share some further reflection that in tackling this and supporting our mahi'ai where their needs are, and even just looking at our logo here at Office of Foreign Affairs, that it's it represents our kalo, the basis of who we are. That I want to look at from a BAE standpoint and board standpoint in looking at our initiatives approaching the county, state, and federal when it comes to property tax matters and water and so forth, and how we can best support and have more kalo growth within our state.
okay. So if there are no further questions, members, can I get a motion to approve the fiscal biennium budget realignment number 2, BR2, core and non-core for the fiscal biennium periods FB, fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25 as summarized at attachment 1.
So moved.
So moved.
Second,
It's been moved by trustee Souza, seconded by trustee Lindsay. Is there any discussion on that motion? If there's not, can I get a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye.
trustee Akaka,
Aye.
trustee Akina,
Aye.
trustee Alapa,
aye.
trustee Galataria.
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay,
Aye.
trustee Souza.
Aye.
Trustee Trask is excused, Chair Whitehead.
Yes.
8 yes votes.
Okay, the motion passes, so we will move on now to, and what are we on? E. 2413, that is the action item number 2413, which is the awarding of a resource grant. Has anybody signed up to testify on this grant?
Yes, Ms. Jermaine Myers.
Okay, Jermaine, this is the approval of the Kumu Vai Na'au Educational Resource Grant, and I will turn the floor over to Jermaine Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Again, for the record, my name is Jermaine Myers. Regarding action item RM 24-13, I see from the packet that 5 awards are being recommended for a total of $1,230,000. My concern is that, and I'm hoping Kapohana can address this, is that when I looked at all the grants that are coming up, and starting from this one specifically, Kauai Island is not represented. They don't have an organization that's serving them alone. When you look at all the grants, they're lumped up with the statewide, and I'm really concerned about that. you know, in the past, our trustees had requested for information that I see that is missing in the report, and I'm just hoping that Kapohana can correct that. So what I want to share is that what I saw in the report is 27 applicants were received, or applications were received. 17 were deemed complete and therefore were evaluated. However, out of that 17, only 5 were recommended for awards. And my concern is that no info or scores or information were given on the 12 that didn't cut the list, that didn't make the list. So I couldn't see if that 12 included organizations that applied from Kauai. And so Trustee Ahuna has to go back to Kauai, and if these organizations that had applied from Kauai, you know, don't see that they're on the list, I'm just concerned that they're going to be questioning, why not us? And why didn't OHA help us to correct whatever OHA felt caused a low score? But I'm not able to see that because no scores or information were provided on the 12 applicants that didn't make the list. And so I noticed that Oahu, in this particular grant, Hawaii Island, 120 Native Hawaiians served for one organization. On Maui, 125 Native Hawaiians served. Molokai, even though they're on the bottom as far as getting service, when you look at all the grants, at least they got their own in this particular grant. They got 120 Native Hawaiians served on Molokai for the organization number 3. And then I was very, very pleased to see that Boys and Girls Club of Hawaii is included. And the reason why I say that is they're located in Wainaimoku. It's particularly in Nanakuli and also in Waianae. And they really service our Native Hawaiian population. They're located, Nanakulis is located right on Homestead. The Waianae one is close to Homestead because all the homesteads are around it. And so I was grateful to see that they were an organization that was included. So I just want to share that with the trustees, and mahalo for the opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jermaine. With that, I will turn this over to our Pohana, Sylvia, to present this action item. You know, I think I want the table. Let's do that one.
Aloha, Chair. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask Ninial Kavaihai, our Director of Community Engagement, and Kiala Newman, our Grants Manager, to take trustees through the various action items before you. I do want to ask Ninial if she could please first just ground our trustees in sort of the history of how we got the various grants in front of you. And then I want her to quickly go over the evaluation process. And then she's also going to take you through this handout that does provide additional detail about the who applied, how much was requested, who was awarded, who wasn't awarded, and if they weren't awarded, the reason for the non-award. So mahalo.
Mahalo e ka pohana. Although no Niniau Kauaihai, I am very happy and pleased to be here presenting on this wonderful opportunity. As you know, I started in mid-February, and that was when I had just missed Grant's team presenting here at Nalama Kukui for the community outreach. But I did and was able to attend 2, one on Molokai and one in Waianae. So I want to mahalo the trustees who made time to attend in person with our community as the fabulous grants team went through our process. The grant categories were done in agenda item 2317, which set up the funded amounts as well as the category names. And so it was this past February that grants team rolled it out and then had applications open through the grant portal through March 29th. And so I want to congratulate Kiala and her team for the excellent work that they've done. This is a record amount of grant applications received from across the Pai'aina. And I'll turn it over to you.
Mahalo nui. Aloha mai Chair. Aloha mai na trustees. Mahalo nui for allowing me to be here and present in front of all of you. I'm actually going to turn it back over to my lovely director, and I'm going to ask her to speak a little bit about our evaluation process for all of you. Mahalo.
Yeah, Kelamai, I was just so pleased to talk about the history. I forgot about evaluation. And so OHA is doing a great job in terms of having external evaluators. So it's not up to administrative staff to review grants. It's similar to the process that the US Department of Education uses for the Native Hawaiian education grant that comes to DC. And then the money gets disseminated and the Native Hawaiian Education Council oversees and does the monitoring of those grant awards. So OHA's grant process has external evaluators who first look to see if the application is complete. And I know this was a very hefty agenda AI submittal because it covered the mo'okuauhau of each grant type in terms of the funding authority, as well as the scoring rubric, as well as the information and budget submission requirements that the grants team had put out in doing the community outreach. And so that all led to the evaluators, our external evaluators, going through all of the grants that passed, who were complete and found eligible to be reviewed, and then were reviewed.
Aloha mai. If I could please turn your attention to the document that was presented and left before you folks. This is titled the Application Analysis. This is an all-inclusive report that was requested by you folks, the trustees. This here outlines every single submitted application that came through the portal. We had a total through the 10 different grant types, actually 11. We put 11 grant types out for solicitation. One of the grant types we did not get any applications for. Therefore, you are not seeing that grant type as an action item before you folks, and that is our Ola Na Iwi, Iwi Kupuna repatriation and reinternment grant. So unfortunately, we did not have any applications come through for that grant type. Therefore, that is excluded from this huina here. This document will take you through all 139 applications that we did receive through the other 10 grant types that we did receive applications for. Please know that within the action item shared, that you do have those tables, as Jermaine did point out, that outlines the amount that we received, the amount that was deemed complete, and so on and so forth as they matriculated through our grants process. Before I dive into the ike that is presented in this palapala, I do want to make sure that I share on behalf of our team that the requirements and definition of a complete application is that the application abides by all of these solicitation requirements. Therefore, before passing an application to our pool of external evaluators, our team does an internal review of the applications. And it is not so much for the content of the application itself, but is to make sure that all attachments, all sections are complete and satisfactory, and we feel generally would provide our evaluators with all they needed within the confines of the application and solicitation, of course, to make a very educated decision. So I just wanted to share that definition of completed application in front of you folks. In regards to this all-inclusive report, again, it does share information on all 139 applications. On the far right, you see a justification for non-award. Unfortunately, and I'd like to mahalo Niniao for her mahalo of us. Our community outreach seemed very successful. Our huaka'i through the Pai'aina to visit and to have FaceTime with the community proved very successful. And we had an overwhelming pool of applications. Unfortunately, at the budget that we have set forth as Niniao did describe in 2317 back in June of 2023, we had a limited budget to work with, and we could only make award recommendations up to the budget limit. Yes, so what you will see here are a lot of comments in regards to applications and organizations that did in fact score very high. And unfortunately, due to budget constraints, we were not able to award these organizations.
So
Mahalo.
Keala, can you
Yes.
explain to trustees
Yes.
how you award until funds are exhausted? Like, what is that process?
Yes. So within our solicitation, we do highlight all the application criteria. That criteria is the exact criteria that our evaluators do evaluate each and every application to. I will preface the continuation of my conversation with saying that we do have confidentiality agreements in place. We do have conflict of interest documentation in place for every single one of our external evaluators, and they do make sure to share if there's any possible conflict of interest before they do go ahead and evaluate. So you can rest assured that no evaluator had a conflict of interest or even potential conflict of interest within our evaluation process. So in regards to your question, Kapo Hana, for the evaluators, so Kalamai, we had 3 evaluators for each of the grant types, and you will see that unfortunately there were a few grant types that had to be evaluated by only 2 evaluators. I want to say that we did do our due diligence in getting 3 evaluators on board, doing our whole process. However, at the very, very last minute, one of our evaluators had a very extreme circumstance that unfortunately had to be excused from our situation, could not complete in no circumstance. Despite the fact that I worked with our entire team to extend the evaluation deadlines multiple times up until the point where we could not extend anymore. And unfortunately, that evaluator was not able to complete the evaluations. So therefore, we only have 2 evaluators for a few of the grant types, 3 of the grant types. That's Pohala Mai, Aina Ho'opula Pula, as well as Ola Ke Kanaka, and that information is definitely disclosed within the action items. Kalamai.
And then in awarding, so you have a budget amount
Yes.
per grant.
Yes.
And if you have more approved applications
Yes.
and proposals than funding
Yes.
provided, how is it ranked?
So they are scored, all applications are scored out of 100 based on the criteria set within the solicitation. They are scored and then they are ranked in order of scoring from highest to lowest, right? First and foremost. And then they are also, this round, we took it a step further and allowed each evaluator to put forth a vote, whether that was to award or to not award. And they could provide extra justification. So say that they gave a score that was maybe a little questionable, right? Maybe the overall score was a 75 from that particular evaluator, but they still felt that it was a worthwhile project, or they had some kind of manao within them and urgency to want to still have that up for recommendation. They did disclose that within the matrices that we compiled of all of the scores and comments and what have you. So they are ranked from highest to lowest. What we do is we take they all come in within a window of minimum to maximum award amount that they are able to request. Of course, a lot of them wanna go for the gusto and request the highest amount, but some of them are very strategic in what they request, and they adjust their budget accordingly and their request accordingly. So you will see that within this particular document, you will see the amount requested and how that compares to the amount received, or the amount that we are recommending to give to each of these organizations. Yes.
Yes. Mr. Chair, I just want to draw the trustees, the committee's attention to the AI RM 2413, which talks about the Kumuvaivai Nauau Educational Resources Grant. And on page 2 of the analysis, you can see how the first 5 under Kumuvaivai Nauau Educational Resources were awarded, and that's reflected in the RM, the agenda item. But you also can see that the next runner-up scored 96.33%, and the one under it 92.67%, but we didn't have the funding anymore because the top 5 took the total budgeted amount. So if that's helpful to go through each agenda item and then refer back and forth, if trustees have questions, then we can talk firstly about the Kumuvaivai Nauau Educational Resources Grant and then go down.
Trustee Lin.
I have a question. Why can't we give them a portion of what they're asking and let the funding go further? Like, this Kumuvaivai Nauau Educational, instead of giving them 400,000, couldn't we have offered them 200,000, which is big bucks, and then give the 96.33% scorers half of that? And then we service 2 organizations for still big money. That would be my concern, that we're not sharing enough. There's big money being given out, and maybe we should share that money.
Mahalo, trustee, for that manao.
Trustee Souza.
Mahalo, Mr. Chair. First of all, Kiala and Ninio, mahalo for you guys' hard work. Stacey, you're truly building an unreal team here at OHA with Wike and Hailama and everyone else. That being said, thank you, Chair, for pointing that out, Chair Hulu, because I also do agree. Because now, and thank you for the packet, because that's what I requested, because I felt that I didn't have enough information to make an informed decision today. And so it's going to be a lot to review. I'm looking at awards that we're not giving out. And that's a concern to me, because these guys scored really high, right? From like 92%, 95%. These guys are qualified. Most of them are new nonprofits. Not most of them, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's safe to say a lot of them are new to this and didn't score as high as a 96% who usually gets it. And it's safe to say that the person who receives $1.5 million in fiscal year 22 will most likely request $1.5 million in fiscal year 23 or 24 or 25 and so on. So like what Chair Hulu pointed out earlier, our job, our fiduciary responsibility, our duty is to do the most we can for our people, our Native Hawaiian beneficiaries. So it's a comment at this point because I don't see myself making any decisions today on this because there's a lot to go through. I agree with Chair. Once again, I believe we need to spread it out. When I see a nonprofit getting $3 million, it's of concern to me because we can spread. I'm looking at one in particular. I just want to point out, I mean, Molokai child abuse, 200,000. I mean, they were qualified, it looks like, but no funds were available at that point because like you stated, and thank you for that. It already went to the top 5. And so for us, when we attend community meetings, island meetings, we were there last year when 2 nonprofits got denied. And so if this is the reason, because we ran out of funding, because the same nonprofits are getting it every year, that's a huge concern for me. But has nothing to do with you. I mean, the integrity of the process, everything. I mean, that's clear. Everything was done right. And so, but for me, it's, I want to spread it out. I want to do more for everyone else. So thank you.
Trustee Ahuna.
Thank you, Chair. No, first of all, I applaud the hard work the administrative grant staff has done. You know, it's a tremendous job. My concerns can be reflected towards the other trustees as well, especially coming from another island. What's important to me is we reach the entire Lahui, and if it's going to be competitive statewide, it's going to be harder for islanders to receive support in these areas. And these types of areas that we're receiving grants involve all islands. We have waterways on all islands. We have educational schools on all islands. We have on all islands, and I think it's very important that we reach all islands and in a non-competitive format. And this might involve trustees realigning again to make sure that the budget can fit all islands as well. But yeah, I just thinking about all islands and making sure that these resources and the support that they receive can be felt on all islands. So thank you very much.
Trustee Lindsay.
I'm thinking that, I don't know how you feel about it, trustees, but I think that maybe we put together a PIG with the trustees and the administration, and we come up with some ideas, because I think the trustees all feel that we gotta share this money a little bit more. Seeing $500,000 donation is pretty big, but we also have a big Lahui that we have to share that kind of money with. So if maybe that can be a consideration. And then I see some entities repeated in different categories. Well, I think that's unfair because if they're getting in one, then somebody else should get in the other. That kind of thinking. I mean, just so that we can spread the money around. So I just, well, we'll see how that goes. I'll talk with the trustees.
Aloha, mahalo, Chair. Mahalo, trustees, for your mana'o. I think that's very important and gives us possibly some direction, and we can go back and see with the grant funds that are tentatively awarded in their different categories, if we can spread that so that every maybe 90% and above can have a share of the funding that belongs to that pot, if that sounds good. I also wanted to just celebrate the awesomeness of our Lahui, that we had so many grantees over the 90% mark in each of the categories. So that was just, to me, it's a good problem to have, I believe. And I think hearing today about reducing the individual award amounts per category so that more can be spread. That's been very helpful to hear.
I think it has a lot to do with you folks going out to the different islands. Keala, I was at the Maui one, and my goodness, we had about 70 people come out. Never in history has that ever happened. So making our lahui aware of what is possible is what brought these applications in. So it's a good thing. We're doing our job.
Trustee Galutera.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not the brightest bulb in the bunch over here, but I want to ask some questions. It seems that the question is, what was the overriding reason for the non-award? Because there's a couple of, conversely, there's a couple of awards that are not explained on how it was awarded. I just would like to get a consistent clarity on when you award $100,000, how it made its way.
Well, you could pick one specifically that you're referring and tell us the page number, and then Kiala and I can look.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is random because there's a lot of non-app, right? Kanuoka Aina Learning Ohana. 391,000, but there's no explanation of how it passed muster. Is there something that you can share? How that works?
Mahalo, trustee. So all of the, kalamay, so I should have put the headers on each of the pages, but the, what the NA refers to is that those are up for actual recommendation for award. And that's
Okay.
why there is no justification for non-award in that
Okay,
column.
okay, so
Yes,
it's not
in
all
the
yet.
AIC, no.
Not
But I
all
just
yet.
wanted to give you folks a complete listing so that you could see everything together, every application together.
Okay, very good. I
in one
appreciate the
list.
clarity on that.
Of course.
I got a couple follow-ups if you don't mind, Chair. You know, is the overriding reason for non-awards lack of funds? I mean, there are a lot of lack of funds. Is this to follow up on Chair Lindsay's?
Yes. There is a, yes, there was an overwhelming pool of applications and only at the maximum award amount that we had set and the amount that was requested of us.
Yeah.
When we factored those things at the very end of all the evaluations and everything, that this is what we're left with. And unfortunately, we did not have enough funds to go around.
Did we back ourselves into a corner by encouraging people to apply, yet not having enough to give?
I think the budget from 23-17, which set the maxes for each of the categories. And as to Trustee Lindsay's point, the overwhelming response when the grants team went out to solicit community interest, which usually hasn't been this strong. So like I said, it was a good problem to have. And I think if we can get a sense of what the committee would like, the grants team, what we can do to go back and see if we can spread the funds around in the respective categories and say like that 90% or the top tier, can at least share in.
They got to
the funding.
recalibrate a little bit. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I have a question, just because it's based on Brickwoods. If you compare the grants who are scoring like 90 and the ones that are scoring like 96 and higher, and you look at where the categories where they're falling shorter than those guys, I mean, and it's only slightly, are they consistent, or are they the same categories that they're falling short in, or are they all different depending on in other words, if they're all the same categories, then you can look at those categories. But if they're all just random different things, then it's harder to address.
Unfortunately, in my analysis of the evaluation breakdown and looking at all of the scores and where, how you were saying where each of the grantees or the potential applicants fell short, there was no consistent pattern that I could nail down.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Trustee Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, thank you guys. There's other categories, or there was one in particular, I think you pointed out earlier, that no one applied for. So is there an opportunity to reallocate funds from that and move it to a category that top 5 took out of funds and now we can give to 7 people or small money? Yeah, but just speaking in general, maybe not in particular to this category you pointed out, but in the future or whatever it is there an opportunity that we didn't give out $1 million in this category, so can we move it to somewhere else? Or does it fall within a realignment with the board and Ramona, and how does that work?
So there is potential for realignment. However, if I could just make a comment on Olana Ivy, upon receiving overwhelming community feedback, I'm hoping to carry over the funds from 24 and come out stronger in 25 with the entire 24 and 25 amount, with a better angle at EV grants, EV Kupuna grants, to hopefully have a stronger approach and of course with all of these recommendations applied as well.
That's great, thank you.
Mahalo.
I also want to applaud the amount of applicants that we had, and that's, I know, mainly part because you guys held grant workshops. We were out there, we engaged with the community, and now you got all these applicants, and now all of a sudden they're all qualified. They know how to fill out the application. That's huge. That's huge. And, for me, it's not about filling out an application or being compliant to a certain point. It's if we already gave these guys money, for me, and this is the question that I've had for a long time, and prior to you guys, even I've been asking, what are the numbers? I want to make sure when we give monies out, because we're not giving them directly to our people, we're giving them to nonprofits. We're giving these monies out. I want to make sure it gets to them. And I'm not paying someone just to talk. You know what I mean? I don't want to give a nonprofit money to talk and build your team. That's not what we do, because we all know that the nonprofit requirement is not 100% serving Native Hawaiians. It's 60 to 70%, right? I'm assuming it's the same. And so because of that, I want to make sure when I ask for these numbers that it's clear and we're being effective. And these nonprofits that we're giving it to are actually helping our people. That's super important for us, especially if we're not giving them directly, like Chair has brought up multiple times. And so, yeah.
Was trustee, I think trustee Aquino. Sorry, trustee Aquino.
Sorry.
Oh, were you oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the team for this great work. This is really a wonderful thing to see resources being distributed through leaders in the Hawaiian community to our beneficiaries. I know we're trying to develop a process, and one thing that makes it a little difficult is that I'm actually, for the first time, able to flip through this analysis and evaluation chart. And so I feel a little less prepared to vote than I should be. There's some questions that I'd like to have answered. I don't know if here or at this table is the appropriate place. There needs to be space for us as trustees to give feedback and raise some questions. One of them has to do with one organization here is being awarded 1.5 million for one project and 1.66 million for another project. It's significantly higher, at least 3 times higher than any of the other grants, and maybe 10 times higher than many of them. I'm sure you have a justification for this. So I think that justification should probably be presented to the trustees, because this is such an extraordinary case. I don't know if you can address that to some extent now. And I do feel a little uncomfortable too that We're addressing it as trustees for the first time before voting and having names of community organizations discussed at a public meeting, and names and potential award amounts become a public document. So even asking you to talk about that makes me feel a little uncomfortable for the honor we want to hold these partners in.
Stacy,
Mahalo, Chair. I'd like to ask Everett Ota, our interim general counsel, to provide trustees with options.
Thank you, Kapohana, and good morning, trustees. I think Trustee Akina had expressed, some concerns about taking action at today's RM committee meeting based on the information that's been made available and the timing in which that information has been made available. So, to that point, the committee can continue to have these discussions, perhaps even if they're inclined to go into the particular action items, but without taking action, maybe deferring action on each of those action items until a later meeting. I would note, though, that we're under time constraints, thank you, regarding the awarding of these funds or the approval of these awards prior to the end of the fiscal year. So we do have the month of June in which to receive the board's approval as to the grant awards. So there's a little bit of time to provide, some time for the trustees to go back and review the information, perhaps have follow-up individual discussions with administration, if there are questions about a particular application and the like. Or the board could also have additional discussions through, a public meeting like this with all members present. We're just not able to have those types of bigger group discussions, outside of a sunshine law meeting. But there is that opportunity to have individual discussions with administration for particular, grants, and then bring that all back to the board at a later to be agendized meeting for this committee and then the board.
Trustee Aquino, are you finished? Or
I acknowledge and thank Everett for letting us know we don't have to deal with this matter today. We can still make the deadline. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's defer it.
Yeah.
Are you done?
I don't know where to put this. Let's see. Are you suggesting that off record, outside of the meeting, we make our inquiries regarding qualifications and so forth, and specifically the question I asked about the organization that has been awarded 2 grants of over 1.5 million? Is that what's being recommended?
Mr. Chair, I think I'm gonna move that we defer the all of the grants today, and then give the trustees an opportunity to meet with you, with staff, 2 trustees at a time. For those that have questions, if that's second.
I'll second that motion. Everett, is there an opportunity for a workshop type of deal that we can dive deeper into this after we review our packets that we received today? No, okay.
Chair, to Trustee Souza's question, there is the opportunity for a workshop. It's just really a timing issue, whether or not the board's schedule allows for them to, meet at another committee meeting to be scheduled in June. I know that there are a number of things, FESPAC, I think the Maui Neighbor Island meetings are still scheduled. So and I think there's also, I'm sorry, Kamehameha lay draping in DC. Yeah, so I think there's just a fairly busy June ahead for the trustees. So, but aside from that, a meeting could be scheduled as a workshop to further discuss these items.
With that case, I second the motion, Chair, to defer, but I also encourage my fellow colleagues to read and meet with the team and go over it and ask the good questions if we're not going to be all together in a workshop type of deal. Just want to also remind my colleagues that, and thank you again, admin. This is merely a recommendation. Every time they come with us with the grant recommendations, is for us to have the discussion, ask the good questions, and we make the decision. So if we don't ask those questions, it falls on us ultimately at the end of the day, right? And so I encourage everyone to read your packets and meet. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ramona.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to remind everyone, it's the end of the year, fiscal 30, right? And so we have part of the packet. There are general funded grants and matching grants that need to be ratified by the end of the year. So time is of the essence too.
Before I move on, I'm still not certain, Keely, did you get all what you wanted from?
Yes,
way
I
back?
appreciate the responses that have just been made, and what I'll do is ask my other question after we
Okay,
take, call for the question.
okay,
So I would call for the question.
wait, no, wait, well, there's still trustees. Can I, let me call you trustee Ahuna.
I just wanted to just have a discussion on the deferment, I mean, I'm okay. I just wanted to make sure I get my hand up in time, but I just wanted to talk about too, that, as a trustee, I don't make the decisions on who gets chosen, and I just want people to know that I fully respect the people who did get chosen. And that is why I'm saying, like, sometimes we have to, like, instead of taking back, we might just have to just be okay with what is going on. There was a process, they followed the process and they went through it. It's just, what I'm trying to talk about is we cannot stop not doing this to our people too. We gotta know how to move on. Like, these are hard choices and hard decisions, and I certainly don't like it. But the thing is, bro, they got chosen. They got chosen the same way everybody got chosen, and I'm not here to take back from people too. Also, so I just want you guys to know that, like, I'm okay with the deferment and all that, and agreeing with this, because I want to know how to move forward and move forward properly. But the thing is, we have to put our trust in our grants team and grants program, and they had a specific policy and procedures that they followed and they chose, and it's us again at the end saying, oh, they cannot get the grant. So I just like us get it. Okay, and this is the kind of stuff that is not good. It's very dysfunctional for us. And I just want to say that hey, our staff did a good job. They followed procedures, and they tried to make the best decision, and let's try to move on. But I don't know where this is going to take us, how long it's going to take, but we got to stop doing this kind of stuff. Thank you.
Trustee Alapa. Trustee Alapa.
You're muted.
Can you, Trustee Alapa? Trustee Alapa, we can't hear you at all.
Yes, okay, hi. Hi, okay, so I'd like to add this as a consideration perhaps in regards to, I empathize with trustee Ahuna, also with Chair Hulu, regarding the awards to go to our people, even if we have to split it up or whatnot, the amounts and so forth. But what about considering appropriations for each island? So at least we'll know each of the islands will get X amount of dollars set aside for them. And there's still some monies in the pot that they can access through approval, of course. I just wanted to throw that in, that could be a possibility. I understand it was supposed to have been available, but was, from what I understand, it was either held back or it didn't go through. And I don't know exactly who is responsible for that. But I really think we should consider X amount of dollars appropriated for each island based on availability, or if not, we just set it aside. X amount of dollars will always be there. And then if they're not awarded anything by a mere a point or whatnot, they still have opportunities to go for what is appropriated and they can still access that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Trustee Lin, wait, let me go to Stacy first, because she may have been addressing something that was brought up.
Yeah, I don't know what the desire of the board is, whether it's to reallocate or not. But if I could just ask for your consideration, if there is a reallocation that is being proposed and is accepted, that you provide us guidance. So is it going to be a percentage of award, or is it going to be a dollar threshold that you want us? So for instance, if its award is 200,000, we are only going to be doing 50% of the award? Or are we going to say no awards over 150,000? So we need some criteria and some guidance if, again, the desire is for us to put additional criteria.
I would hope, that at the point of the deferral isn't to revamp the whole thing by then, because that's crazy. I would assume it's just to make sure that the ones that have been approved are worthy of being approved. Right? I don't know. Trustee Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would hope that the deferral would be to potentially change the threshold, because we're talking about it right now. If we wait and we give these guys all this money and then wait till next time, what good is that? Right? We want to spread it out now. We don't want to not make a mistake. We don't want to carry on as business as usual this time around, but no, we'll fix it next time. Right? We have the power and the time. Got a lot of time to fix it now. Thank you, Chair.
Ramona.
Excuse me. I just wanted, I was on before. Yeah. I just want to say that I think it's not the people that we're giving. I think they did a good job of choosing the people and the entity, but it's the amount of money. And if we can just share it more among our people, that would be really helpful.
Just for some background, this for fiscal 24 was our highest grant budget ever, 17.7 million or 17.6. And for fiscal 25, it's 17.8 million. So just for some background, also included in the budget realignment attachment is attachment 2. So it shows everything that was recast and everything awarded and everything is proposed to be awarded. So at the end, if everything is awarded or, recommended for awarding, at the end of fiscal 24, we will have 1.9 million of fiscal 24 budget. And in fiscal 25, we have 11.7 million more to award. So just background information.
Cutie. Where is she?
Trustee Alapa? Can you unmute?
I'm unmuting now.
Yeah, as chair has left the room, I believe you take over chair.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I did not see that. I can't see from where I'm at. Are there any more hands up? Any questions?
I do, Madam Vice Chair. I just wanted to make two comments. For the entity that was awarded twice, both over $1 million. In one category, on page 20, they were the only applicant. And on page 12, they were one of 3, one applicant which had an incomplete application, so didn't go to evaluation. So they were one of 2, and that's how the allotment was awarded in both instances. my other comment I just wanted to say, which is another piece of good news, is that once fiscal year 24 closes, grants team is doing an analysis of all the existing grants and getting the data that Trustee Souza and other trustees have commented upon in terms of what is the bang for OHA's buck, you know, for all the entities that are currently awarded and the work that they've been doing. So expect that in the beginning of the first quarter of the new fiscal year for 25.
Nini, thank you for answering my question, and I respect the work that has gone into it, but what I heard you say basically is that the party that received 2 grants, one of the grants was because they were the only applicant, and the other grant was because they were one of 2, one had dropped out. And and you awarded the highest amounts, over 1.5 million to each of them in each case. I'm not sure that the default of being the only applicant or the pool of applicants shrinking to 2 should be the criteria that determines the amount that is given. And I'll just take that as an example of one of the things we may want to look at and give input. I will also take this moment to express that I am very pleased with the fact that administration has put a robust package in front of us and has done a great deal of work and made significant accomplishment in that. My critical comments today about process and about criteria have to do with the dance that we need to do with each other between board and administration. And I'm confident that we're going to be good dance partners moving forward. Thank you.
Mahalo, Trustee Akina. Did Trustee Wahe'e return?
No, he has not. We do have 2 hands up with Trustee Souza
Okay.
and Trustee Galataria.
Go
And a
ahead,
motion is
Trustee.
still on the table for deferment.
Okay. Trustee Galutaria.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I appreciate all of the dialogue. And as I often say, I would like the words of the previous speaker to be entered into the record as if they were my own. Because it just, a recalibration of the entire system is not easy. We're going through growing pains, if that's what you want to call it, for this one, because our grant system is now going to be so robust. We got the front end working, maybe the back end got to get a little better. Certainly the information that we need to gather as a board to make informed decisions could be improved a bit so that we have the time by which to make these and distill, discern, and decide. So that could be taken into consideration. As far as the deferment is concerned, I'm gonna vote for the deferment as well today. Just want to be on record for that. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Madam Chair,
Trustee Souza?
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I call for the question on deferral. The motion made by Trustee Trustee Hulu and seconded by Trustee Souza.
Call for the vote.
Do we call? Yes, just going to call for the vote, please.
Sure. Trustee Ahuna, this is for
Honolulu.
deferral. Honolulu. Trustee Akaka.
Aye.
I'm sorry, was that an aye?
Aye.
Mahalo. Trustee Akina.
Aye.
Trustee Galataria.
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay.
Aye.
Trustee Souza.
Aye.
Trustee Trask is excused. Chair Wahe'e is out. Vice Chair Alapa.
Aye.
Trustee Ahuna.
Aye.
7 yes votes. Motion passes. The action items 2413 through 2424 have been deferred.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair.
Yes,
Alapa?
yes, I'm sorry. Trustee Akina?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more item. I would encourage the RM committee to discuss with our attorney, Everett, the protocols surrounding the presentation of names and amounts that are in consideration for awards before decision has been made, so that we can be better instructed in how to do that properly.
Mahalo, Trustee Akina, for that. It's noted. Are there any other questions, concerns, comments?
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye.
Trustee Akaka,
Aye.
Trustee Akina,
Aye.
Trustee Galataria,
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay,
Aye.
Trustee Souza,
Aye.
Trustee Trask is excused, Chair Whitehead is out, Vice Chair Alapa.
Aye.
7 yes votes, the meeting's adjourned.
All right, mahalo, everyone.